were slaughtering for al-jinn. And so this chapter actually does what? It reaffirms, or it puts an extra point of emphasis on the previous chapter. And it also emphasizes a very important principle in our religion, which is sadd al-dhara'i'. It is the principle of not just avoiding the haram, but avoiding what could lead to what? To the haram. Not just avoiding the wrong things, but avoiding the things that could lead to the wrong things. Because if a person slaughters where people slaughter for other than Allah, it may be just a matter of time before they actually are doing what? What the other people are doing, slaughtering for other than Allah. So avoid that altogether. It's a part of that whole principle. And in this chapter, the Imam mentions one ayah and one hadith. So he says, the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where he says, لا تقم فيه أبدا لمسجد أسس على التقوى من أول يوم أحق أن تقوم فيه رجال يحبون أن يتطهروا والله يحب المتطهرين. So he says to the Prophet Muhammad, never stand therein. Therein, referring to Masjid al-Dirar, the Masjid of harm. So basically, during the time of the Prophet, when the Prophet was in Medina, al-Munafiqun, the hypocrites, they wanted an outpost, a place where they could gather, a place where they could gather and plot and do different machinations against the believers. And they could do so under the guise of what? Of righteousness, under the guise of piety, so that they would not be suspected as being saboteurs, as being people who are engaging in espionage. How do we do that? If we just gather in somebody's home, or we gather in another place, that will bring about suspicion. But what if we said we want to build a masjid in a place which is convenient for us all to offer prayers in? This would give our malicious activity a righteous veneer. Y'all see that? So they created this Masjid al-Dirar. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposed what they were really up to. They were really up to trying to divide the believers and to sow discord amongst the believers and to plot against the believers. So Allah told the Prophet, لا تقم فيه أبدا. Never offer prayer in what? In that masjid, in that place. What does that have to do? How do we connect that with the title of the chapter? It's basically as if the Imam is saying, just like Allah prohibited the worship of Allah in a place that was established for ma'siyatillah, for the disobedience of Allah. He said similarly, a person shouldn't slaughter in a place where people intentionally establish that place, not just for any normal ma'siyah, any ordinary disobedience, but for the greatest ma'siyah, which is a shirk. Y'all see the connection? Y'all see the relationship? The Prophet was told, don't pray in Masjid al-Dirar. It's a masjid. And if the Prophet were going to pray, he would pray to Allah. But these people established this prayer for the purpose of what? Of disobeying Allah, undermining Allah. They established it with a malicious intent, with an evil intent, and they were doing evil things there. So if the Prophet was told not to pray for Allah in a place where people were doing sin, or was established for the sake of sin, how much more so should a person not slaughter in a place that was established for a shirk, for the ultimate disobedience of Allah, which is a shirk? That's the analogy between the ayah and the title of the chapter. Then he mentions the hadith of Thabit bin Dhahak. نظر رجل أن ينحر إبلا ببوانة فسأل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال هل كان فيها وثن من أوثان الجاهلية يعبد؟ قالوا لا. قال فهل كان فيها عيد من أعيادهم؟ قالوا لا. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أوفي بنذرك فإنه لا وفاء لنذر في معصية الله ولا فيما لا يملك ابن آدم. So in this hadith, Thabit bin Dhahak, he mentions that a man had made a nadhr, he made an oath that he would sacrifice a camel at a place called Buwana. So he made an oath and he was going to slaughter the camel. And not just anywhere. Slaughter what? In this specific place. So he asked the prophet if it was okay to do that. So the prophet asked him a few questions. First question he asked him, he said, was this a place where there was an idol which was worshipped? Because some of the people who came out of Jahiliyyah, they assigned certain virtue to certain places based upon their pagan beliefs and what they used to do and the pagan practices they used to engage in. So he said, did the place have any idol which was worshipped amongst the idols of Jahiliyyah? So the people answered, no. The prophet then asked him, he said, did the disbelievers hold any of their festivals in that place? Was it a place that they previously held in high esteem and they would hold special occasions there or festivals, etc.? And they answered, no. Whereupon Allah's messenger said, Awfi binadrik, then fulfill your vow. Verily there is no fulfilling of a vow made in disobedience to Allah, nor one that is beyond a person's capacity. So you see, the prophet asked him, did the people used to worship idols there? Did they used to sacrifice to idols there? As if to say, if they used to worship other than Allah in that place, you shouldn't do an act of worship for Allah in that same place. You guys see that? So that's basically what the prophet is saying in a roundabout way. So when the man said no, the people, that wasn't the case. The prophet permitted it. Meaning, if he had said yes, the prophet wouldn't have permitted it. And so basically, this is how the Imam supported the title of the chapter with this ayah and with this hadith, basically saying that the principle that lies before us, in addition to ma thabata annahu ibadah fasarfuhu li ghayri Allahi shirk, whatever we confirm that is an act of worship, offering it to other than Allah is idolatry. In addition to that, whatever is confirmed as an act of worship should not be offered to Allah in a place where people have worshipped other than Allah. In addition to that, the chapter also benefits the concept of sadd al-dhara'a, that in Islam, we're not just told to avoid the wrong thing. We're told to avoid everything that could lead to the wrong thing. And so we don't just not worship other than Allah. We don't do anything that could put us in a situation where that could ultimately happen. And not just may happen to us, it may happen to what? To other generations. You guys see that? So a person may go to a place where people slaughter for other than Allah, and he slaughters for Allah in that place. But the other people who see him or know that he come to know that he did that don't know what he was doing there. You guys see what I'm saying? And so other generations will come and say, hey, yeah, my dad used to go there and slaughter. So he goes there and finds other people slaughtering for other than Allah, and he does what? He thinks that his father also slaughtered for other than Allah, and he does what the other people do. And so it's not just that we're trying to close the door for us falling into sin, but also other generations. And we're going to come across a chapter where Ibn Abbas is going to explain that the way that shirk first came into being was the fact that some people erected statues just to remember and honor certain people who did good things in their time. But over time, people forgot why those statues were erected. And the shaitan came to them and told them these statues were worshipped. You guys see that? And so what Islam says is we don't just avoid the shirk itself. We avoid what leads to shirk. In this case, it was what? The erection of what? Of idols and graven images. And so similarly here, we don't just not worship other than Allah. We don't even worship Allah in places where people worship other than Allah. That makes sense? طيب تفضل حاتم.
Now, does that only apply to that, or also about praying in church?
I think the general rule applies to every act of worship, including prayer. But an exception will be made for a church or a synagogue. One, because of precedent. We have precedent where Muslims in history, they prayed in churches and it was approved. There was no nakir. There was nobody who disapproved of it. And somebody would say, well, the Christians, they pray to Jesus, and the Jews, they do their things. But just generally speaking, our religion has made an exception and made exceptions or exemptions or given exemptions to what? Ahl Kitab. So yes, the rule applies generally, but it doesn't apply specifically to Christians, even though the Christians are fihim shirk. They are not referred to by our deen, they're not referred to by Allah, not referred to by His Messenger as mushrikeen. They've been given one, a special exemption. So for example, if a Hindu sacrificed an animal and offered me that meat, I could not eat it. But if a Christian did, I could eat it. That's what? A special exemption. Hindus are pagans.
But unless he sacrifices in the name of Jesus, doesn't mention.
Well, obviously, but you get my point. My point is that the meat of a pagan, even if he slaughtered it in the name of Allah, I couldn't eat it. You see what I'm saying? But the Jews and Christians, special exemption. A Hindu woman could be as chaste as a chaste woman could be. I could never marry her. But an exemption has been made for the Jews and Christians. You see that? So there's a difference between fihim shirk wa hum mushrikun. They have some polytheism that they do, right? There's no question about it. There's a difference between that and they are polytheists. They are idolaters. So when we talk about لا يتعبد الله في مكان يتعبد فيه غير الله. When we mention this principle of we don't worship Allah in a place where other than Allah is worshipped, we're talking about places outside of what? The churches and synagogues, the places of worship of the Jews and Christians who have been given an exemption. Yeah.
So when you say an example places, for example, on Allah was invited by the patriarch to Jerusalem.
Hey.
Okay. He didn't say, no, we're not allowed. He just said...
He abstained.
He just said, I'm not going to do it, but otherwise, I fear that the Muslims...
People will follow suit, or, even worse, they'll seize these churches and turn them into masajid. And so there was a wisdom in his abstaining, but there's also a wisdom in the way that he expressed it. He didn't say it was wrong. We can't do that. He just said, I'm not going to do it because I fear what the consequences might be, what the implications might be. And so, so whenever we talk this concept or this principle that we mentioned, it doesn't include the Jews and Christians in their place of worship because they've been given that overall exemption of being Ahlul Kitab. Doesn't mean that they don't have shirk. They don't do shirk. But they're not mushrikun in the sense of the people who are not Jews and Christians, like the pagans and the Hindus and the fire worshippers and al-Majus, etc. Anything else? Not tafadhal.
Have an option. There's a masjid here, there's a church over there. The church is closer to your house.
Hey, no, of course. You pray in the masjid. We're just saying that a person might be in a situation muttar, you know what I mean? There's no other place to pray. There's a clean, dry place to pray, and they're offering you. Or you happen to be there. Let's say, for example, you went to, they invited you to the church to talk about Islam. You have a coworker, and they say, we do these things where we invite people from different religions to talk about their faith so we can learn as Christians about other people's faith. They invite you to do that. And while you're there, Maghrib comes in, right? Could you offer prayer? Absolutely. You find they have like an office or they have a conference room or something like that. You go and you offer prayer. You could do that, right? Suppose, God forbid, you were invited by some Hindus. You see what I'm saying? It's like, nah, I'm out. Deuces, right? I'm out. You know what I mean? Like, peace. You know what I mean? You guys see the difference? Alhamdulillah. Any other question? Comments? جزاكم الله خيرا يا اخوان. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك محمد وعلى اله وصحبه.